Well, good afternoon and welcome to the InteLAC Market webinar. My name is Amaya Garzón and I'm part of the CONEXX-EU team, an NGO specialized in international cooperation based in Belgium and one of the partners of this project. The overall objective of InteLAC Market project is to address the challenge of integrating migrants and refugees from Latin America and the Caribbean into the European labour market by bringing together experienced partners and academics and by promoting a cooperation network of countries that are among the most affected ones: Spain, Belgium, Austria and Italy. The consortium of this project, co-financed by Erasmus+, are Universitat Rovira i Virgili, INDEPCIE and Acción Laboral from Spain, Università di Padova from Italy, the Austrian Association of Inclusive Society from Austria, and our team, CONEXX Europe in Belgium. The project has the specific objectives of develop and test research-based educational training, guidance and counseling for migrants, as well as guidance and counseling for migrants and refugees from Latin America and the Caribbean countries to foster their social occupational inclusion in the labor market. In order to do that, the first result is an investigation of the situation of the Latin American and Caribbean migrants in Europe. Secondly, the creation of tools and information, useful information materials for the Latin American and Caribbean migrants in Europe. And lastly, a dissemination and communication campaign and publications of the results of this project. The project will organize a series of webinars as part of this public outreach campaign that I just mentioned. The first one will be the general introduction. The second one, a legal framework analysis. The third one, the best practices in the labor inclusion. The fourth webinar will be about analyzing the situation of Latin American and Caribbean migrants in Europe. And the last two are going to be the analysis of the results of the qualitative research and quantitative research. On the 1st January 2021, there were 23.7 million citizens of non-member countries living in one of the EU member states, representing 5.3% of the EU population. This information comes from data on migration published by Eurostat in March 2022. The article represents a selection of findings from the more detailed statistics explained article. This article shares that the highest shares of non-nationals in Luxembourg and the lowest in Romania. In relative terms, the EU member state with the highest share of non-national citizens was Luxembourg, with 47% of its total population. A high proportion of non-nationals, 10%, was also observed in Malta, Cyprus, Austria, Estonia, Latvia, Ireland, Germany, Belgium, and lastly, Spain. Belgium is one of the most multicultural and multiracial countries of the European Union. Today, the immigrant origin population represents about 12% of the total population. Among the non-European citizens, Moroccans and Turks are the largest groups, but almost all the nationalities of the world are represented in this country. The immigrant origin population is unequally distributed in the territory. For example, in the capital city, in Brussels, it comprises more than 28.5% of the population, whereas in Flanders it does not reach 5% and it is 10% in Wallonia. According to Stadtwelt data, in 2019, the foreign population in Belgium represented 12.2% of the country's total population. In 2009, foreign nationals accounted for 9.4% of Belgium's population. As far as migration from Latin America and Caribbean countries is concerned, it should be noted that migration from these countries represents only 4.2% of the migration that Belgium receives. Looking at the countries of origin of Latin American migrants, we find that the country from which most migrants arrived in Belgium is Brazil, followed by Ecuador and the Dominican Republic. According to Saez and Salazar data, the Latin America population in Belgium is relatively young, between 20 and 35 years old, predominantly female, with at least a high school diploma. For the most part, women work in domestic service and men in construction, painting, and gardening. However, in recent years, Latin American men are increasingly working in cleaning and domestic service, occupations normally associated with Latin American women. Focusing just in the case of the Brussels region, we can confirm that this community is a strong niche in domestic work in Brussels and in Belgium, most often in the informal labor market, for example, caring for the elderly, child, or sick people. In this table, we can see the refugees who have been granted asylum in the last 10 years in Belgium. Refugees are people who are recognized as refugees under the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees, or its 1967 protocol, the 1969 Organization of African Unity Convention governing the specific aspect of refugee problems in Africa, people recognized as refugees in accordance with the UN Refugee Agency Statute, people granted refugee-like humanitarian status, and people provided temporary protection. We have to mention that Belgium has a refugee statistics from 2021, and this represents 13.99% increase from 2020. Considering the regions of birth of people granted international protection in the period 2001-2014, in this table we can see that the largest group, 38%, is born in Western Asia. People born in Sub-Saharan Africa follow with 32%. The third largest group consists of people from non-European countries. For the 2001-2006 cohort, the group coming from non-European was the largest, 51%, and for the 2007 and 2009 cohort and the 2010 cohort, the people coming from Western Asia constitute the largest group, followed by the individuals arriving from Sub-Saharan Africa. Here we can see from which Latin American and Caribbean countries asylum seekers have applied for asylum in Belgium. El Salvador stands out among them, followed by Colombia and Venezuela. These three are clearly the countries with the most asylum seekers in Belgium. Taking into account that the number of asylum seekers in Belgium in 2021 is 19,000 and the number of accepted applications is 8,000, we can state that the percentage of Latin American and Caribbean refugees in Belgium is very small. If we compare by percentages, Latin American refugees only represent about 3% of all refugees seeking asylum in Belgium. Belgium has over 28,000 reception places in total. The network comprises collective and individual reception structures. The collective structures are reception centers managed by FEDASIL, the Red Cross of Belgium, or other partners. The individual structures are housing managed by the Public Social Welfare Center or by NGOs. The reception centers are open, meaning the residents are free to come and go. They receive accommodation and meals, clothing, and also social, medical, and psychological support, a daily allowance, pocket money, for example, as well as access to legal assistance and services such as interpreting and training. Focusing now on the laws regulating the employability of migrants in Belgium, in order to work in Belgium, foreign workers must have a work authorization. Until the 31st December 2018, this work authorization was evidenced by a work permit. Since 1st January 2019, the single permit has been enforced. Thus, the resident document now indicates whether the person concerned has a work authorization or not. We also have to take into account that every region has different regulations. So for example, in Brussels it's going to be different than in Wallonia and different than in Flanders. The work authorization can be of two types. The first one for salaried activity, single permit or work permit, and the second one for self-employed activity or professional card. Finally, we will mention different organizations working with the study group in Belgium. The first one is MIRIA, is one of the partners of the Belgian National Contact Point, or NCP, of the European Migration Network. MIRIA is hence a member of the steering board of the contact point and actively participates in the daily operation. The second one is Bel Refugees. This organization aims to mobilize and federate citizens and associative energies to transform societal representations and attitude about people in migration and to contribute to offer a response to their needs that is fundamentally human and of quality by developing, if necessary, new solutions. And lastly, Fair Work Belgium. This association is a Brussels-based organization that works for the defense of labor rights of the most vulnerable workers. This includes support for migrants arriving in Belgium with the intention of entering the labor market, advising them on issues such as the work permit required to work in Belgium. So thank you very much for attending this webinar of the InteLAC Market project, and see you in the second webinar. Thank you.